Most people go their entire lives trying to avoid stress, but I honestly believe that that is a mistake because some of the biggest breakthroughs I have within my own life came from when I was experiencing stress. Now, I'm not talking about the stress of losing a loved one, being in extreme poverty, or having a serious medical illness. Instead, I'm talking about a concept that I like to call 1% stress. And as a high performer, this is something that you will experience. So let's get right into today's video. Now, before we start this video, I want to first define different types of stress because I think everyone kind of looks at stress and thinks of it as one particular thing. But in reality, that's not the case. So, for example, we have something called distress, and distress is any negative form of stress that you might experience. This is like the stress that a lot of people typically think about, such as losing a loved one, being in extreme financial hardships, experiencing some health complication. This is all forms of negative stress. Now, on the flip side, we have something called eustress. Now, eustress isn't quite talked about quite often, but eustress is a positive form of stress. So let's say before you gave a large presentation, you got those inner butterflies or those feelings of nerves. That would be eustress. Or another great example is, let's say you're about to run a marathon and you're stressed about your time for the beginning of a race. Again, that's another form of eustress. And some other examples of eustress would include launching a business, preparing for a really big licensing exam, and the list goes on and on. So classified as a stress because there's a lot of work that has to go in, there's probably a lot of stakes at hand, but you know that if you come out on the other side, typically the results are positive. But a stress that all high performers will experience is something that I like to call 1% stress. This is the stress that comes from going after your goals, looking for your potential, and becoming the best version of yourself as a high performer. On this path of becoming the best version of yourself, you cannot avoid 1% stress. Some of the 1% stresses that I think about are hitting your fitness goals, ensuring that you're eating the right macronutrients, going up and working on your dream life and your dream vision, ensuring that you're studying and preparing and really thinking out towards your future, asking yourself critical questions on a consistent basis. We're gonna go much more deeper in this concept of 1% stress. At the time of this recording, I wanna talk about some of the 1% stress that I'm currently facing. First thing that I think about quite often, and it's a stressor that I'm working towards constantly, is actually improving my fitness goals. Well, as mentioned before, some of you may or may not know, I've currently been prioritizing a lot of my fitness and really trying to make a strong fitness transformation. And part of that journey has been actually to get really relentless on what I have to do in order to my goals. For example, every single day I have to hit my macronutrients, meaning that I have to hit a certain number of calories, ensure that I hit a certain number of protein. On top of that, I need to ensure that I'm training 5 times a week with progressive overload. Outside of actually working on my fitness goals, I actually have goals for content creation. So actually putting out and delivering consistent quality videos to all of my high performers. It's really analyzing my content and learning how I can improve. Learning how to challenge myself in new environments and new formats so that I can be a more effective content creator in the process. Another part of 1% stress is tracking my system. So some of you may know I track my habits on a consistent basis through my MITs, which is my most important task. And essentially that's a Notion template where I'm basically leveraging all the high performing activities that I have to do on a consistent basis in order to work towards my goals. The crazy thing about this is I'm currently in the process of really just increasing my inputs that causes the 1% stress. Another form of 1% stress is showing up every single day, even when life is extremely chaotic. Not too long ago, one of the windshields in my car had broken down, so I had to still manage ensuring that I was hitting my KPIs for myself, also ensuring that anything else outside of work was getting completed. And before we continue with this video, I actually recently checked my YouTube analytics and it showed me more than 87% of you who watch my videos consistently are not subscribed. So if you get any value from the videos, I truly ask that you just hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. It's completely free and it helps this channel grow and elevate into bigger and better things. Now back to the video. On top of that, that's learning how to manage relationships, that's learning how to manage systems, that's learning how to manage my work schedule. And you can sort of see how all these things over time start to pile up. And another thing I didn't mention was I'm very methodical on the books that I'm currently reading. So ensuring that I'm actually not reading a book, but actually studying it, taking down notes, learning how I can apply it in my life, and the list goes on and on. And I'm not trying to tell you all these things to say, look at me, I'm doing all these amazing things. I'm really just trying to classify what 1% stress is as a high performer. And I truly believe that there's actually a lot of beauty in 1% stress. And I want to highlight a very powerful story for all of you. So when I was in university in my 3rd year, I will never forget this moment. Every single month that I start at university, I use this monthly calendar, and I also use my big daily calendar in order to manage and prioritize all the upcoming deadlines, tasks, exams, etc. that I have coming up. And in this month of March in particular, it was insane. So during my 3rd year, a lot of people may or may not know this, but I was actually working 3 jobs. On top of working 3 jobs, I was also in a very academically intense science program. On top of that, I was also a leader of a club, and I want to manage all these things from my fitness, from my health, It was just a lot. For example, most university students in my program aren't even recommended to work one job, but I was doing 3. And I'll never forget how impactful this month was, because when I was writing out all my deliverables on the calendar, for example, what exams I had, my work hours and the shifts I had to be present at, all the club meetings I had to attend, the fitness stuff I wanted to accomplish, I genuinely, for the first time in my life, looked at my calendar and froze. And the reason why I froze is because I was so nervous, because I didn't truly understand how I was going to complete everything on my calendar. Like, I looked at all the stuff, all the deliverables. On certain days I had 2 exams, there were work events, there was other times where I had to be present for club meetings, and the list sort of compiled. And genuinely, when I looked at that calendar, I did not know if I was able to accomplish it. And that was the first time in my life when I scheduled a monthly calendar and I seriously questioned if I was capable of even accomplishing it. So what happened? Basically, what I did was what I always tell all of you to do: really just keep winning and push forward. I knew I wasn't gonna retreat. I knew I wasn't gonna quit these jobs. I knew I had to show up and still give my best effort, because I knew on my transcript, it wasn't gonna say, oh, he got this mark, but it's okay because he was working 3 jobs. I had to perform as a high performer despite all the chaos that was going on. And honestly, that month transformed me completely, because not only did I actually go ahead and actually go and succeed, but there was a lot of sacrifice that had to come into this month. There were actually a few days where I barely got any sleep, if not no sleep at all. And that's not something I say to brag or encourage others to do, but what I am saying is that those were sacrifices that I had to make. I remember vividly, I had this one massive project for a biology course that I was taking, and because my week was so busy, because I had multiple exams stacked up, because I had a lot of work shifts, I didn't have any time to actually work on this project. Now, keep in mind that this project was given to us 3 weeks in advance, so we were given a lot of time. And in university, 3 weeks is a lot of time to prepare for a project. But the reason why our class was given so much time was because this project was a lot of work. But as it was coming down to the wire, I had to finish that project in a minimum of 5 hours. And the issue was, I had so much work ahead of that time as well that I didn't even sleep that day. But the craziest part about this was, a part of this class and part of presenting the project, the best presentation within the class actually got an additional 5% grade upgrade. So I was committed to getting that despite not getting any sleep. And I stayed up all night to finish that project, rehearse it a few times, and actually go in and perform it on the morning. And thankfully enough, I was actually awarded the best presentation in that class, and I was awarded the additional 5%. And to me, the biggest accomplishment wasn't that I was awarded this additional 5%. It was actually the fact that I got no sleep. Despite having a hectic week of multiple exams, staying up late, I still showed up and delivered with excellence. But the beautiful thing about 1% stress is that once you come out of it, there is growth that pursues. So I will never forget that time in my 3rd year of university when that growth had occurred, because now it reformed my mind on, if I had another crazy month with a lot of objectives and deliverables, I know what I'm capable of. I know I have the confidence, because I've actually been through a season that was extremely cumbersome, that was extremely intense, that I had to sacrifice some things just in order to get the results I was hoping for. And I want to show you guys a really quick analogy with how 1% stress works and how it shapes you into a high performer. So if I take this rubber band right here and I just put it around my fingers, right? What 1% stress does is, as you go through these stressors, so having multiple jobs and deadlines, working on your fitness objectives, still building out your dream life, becoming the best version of yourself, what you'll see is over time, the elastic band starts to expand and you become more capable of handling higher demands, higher projects. When you look at someone who can manage a lot of things on their plate, it's not that they're quote unquote better than you, but what they have been able to do is really stretch their inner elastic band so that their capacity and their tolerance for work becomes a lot stronger. And that's why I'm such a fan of 1% stress, because as you're able to accumulate it, you know that on the other side of it, there's growth. And this is something that you will not be able to escape as a high performer. If you want to live your best life, if you want to show up every single day, if you want to change the trajectory of your life and constantly seek constant improvement, you're going to have to experience this. Every single person that you admire, every single person that has accomplished something big, had all had to undergo the 1% stress. It's literally the price that you have to pay. But the best thing about 1% stress is that there is growth. You become a better person. It may not feel like growth in the meantime. Like when I was going through my season of March Madness and everything was chaotic, I was working as an RA on campus, managing over 30 university students, and then I was a student ambassador on campus and taking people on tours, and I was also doing like a design internship as well, combining all that with school that was going on and having all these things compile. It didn't feel like growth in the short term, but in the long term, I realized what happened. My systems became more refined. I became more relentless. I had to learn how to really guard my time. Like for example, when you learn how to really guard your time, you'll notice that you don't waste it on anything because there was no time to waste. Like when when people say that, you have to really take in what that means. When you have all these deliverables, when you know that if you mess up, there's actual real consequences, the only thing you can do is push forward and be excellent. And that's what 1% stress brings out of you. So when we go back to this concept of stress, because we typically find that our brains are wired to try to avoid stress, the first thing I want you to understand is you have to ask yourself, what sort of stress am I currently undergoing? Because if it's distress, that is completely different from 1% stress. When you experience something like 1% stress, I actually want you as a high performer to lean into it. You may be in a current season of 1% stress right now. You might be dealing with multiple objectives, multiple demands as a high performer. But when you classify what you're doing as 1% stress, you know that you're getting better. For example, when I think about myself, documenting this journey, providing value to all of you, working on systems, becoming more refined, I know that over time, these skills compound if I stick with it long enough. And the same thing applies to anything that you're working on, any career objective that you're currently working on as well. Sticking with the process, building out your vision for what that is to come will bring you closer to the person that you want to be. And I also want to stress how blessed you are to actually experience 1% stress. I already gave you guys a definition of what distress is. And if any of you are currently facing distress, and these are like the real stresses of life, like I said before, extreme poverty, no shelter, a really profound medical illness, this is real stress. And my heart goes with you if you're currently, or you know someone who's experiencing this. But if you're currently under 1% stress, I want you to be so extremely grateful. Like, what a blessing it is that I get to go to the gym, train 5 times a week, and track my calories. Like, there's people around the world that will never get to experience that. What a blessing it is that I get to build out a community of high performers who are all thinking on the same wavelength and becoming the best version of themselves. What a blessing it is that I get to pursue higher education, learn from some of the best professors, and take that knowledge and then apply it across my career. Although we feel like these stresses are all coming at us at once and why me, it is such a blessing to experience 1% stress. So now when I'm currently in seasons where I have to really look at the stress that I'm currently under, if it's 1% stress, not only am I being grateful for it because these are the things that I prayed for. If I want to become a high performer, I know that this is what I have to step into, but I'm also leaning into with gratitude because I know that not everyone gets to experience this. Some people only get to see this type of stress. And I've talked about this before, but half the game is really having a strong perspective on what you're doing. Because once you can reframe your perspective, you'll show up to your work with more enthusiasm. You'll be more committed to the long-term vision of what you're creating. Like when I get to build out communities, work with you guys one-on-one, and really build out systems to help you achieve your goals, this is a blessing. This is part of 1% stress, but this is the stress that I asked for, and I'm extremely grateful for it. So that's it for today's video, guys, on basically the concept of 1% stress. For all my high performers, I actually want to hear from you. What is some of the 1% stress that you're currently facing and undergoing? And for those of you who are interested in working with me one-on-one to really build out your systems, learning how to tackle your 1% stressors every single day and making failure impossible, you can check the link in my description or pinned in the comment section. And also for those who are interested in the high performers community where you can connect with like-minded individuals about these topics more in depth, check out my description as well. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe because it truly helps the channel grow. And you know what I always say, make sure to always believe that you will achieve. My name is Miles, aka Mr. High Performance, and I am signing off. Woo!